Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would now like to turn to another very essential topic. And one, I would like to mention that the majority party, the Republican Party, is long overdue in bringing to this floor the National Security Supplemental Bill that includes support for Ukraine. Let me be clear. Ukraine is fighting for its liberty. But Ukraine is not asking the American people to die for her, but she's only asking some help from us to buy the ammunition to win their own liberty. How could any American turn their back on this plea? We are the leader of the free world. We like to say that. Are we really the leader of the free world? We cannot let Ukraine fail. How can this Congress dither as lives are lost because of lack of ammunition, as liberty hangs in the balance on the eastern edge of Europe, our closest allies? Ukraine has become the scrimmage line for liberty on the continent of Europe today. Russia, without provocation, invaded the sovereign territory of Ukraine first in 2014 and then expanded its zone of terror to take as much of Ukraine as the free world allows. Think about that. Russia's dictatorship historically has a very sinister habit of gulping up territory that does not belong to it. History instructs us that peace is possible when Russia is pushed back into her own boundaries. Just in the last century, Russia killed more innocent people than even Nazi Germany. Russia forcibly starved and murdered over 12 million people. Humankind doesn't even know how many because it was such an annihilation. Only God truly knows how many. Then Russia occupied territory in Europe for over 40 years, as far west as Berlin, Germany, and as far south as Turkey. Most recently, Vladimir Putin has invaded Georgia in 2008, Crimea, and Ukraine in 2014, and then a full-scale illegal invasion into the rest of Ukraine in 2022, which remains a hot war and ongoing as we are here today. Russia's greedy dictators, from Stalin to Putin, chomp off territory that is not theirs to take. Borders of nations must be sovereign. The history of Europe is also clear. Russia is an expansionist tyranny. Sadly but true, it always has been. Vladimir Putin intends to keep it that way. If the free world does not stand up to Russia now, it will continue to plunder adjoining nations, most of which are members of NATO. That broadened conflict will mean a much enlarged conflagration that will engage NATO militarily, and that includes the United States of America. For some very misguided members of the U.S. Congress to let liberty twist and twist in the wind in Ukraine deeply harms the freedom-seeking, courageous people and soldiers of Ukraine. I find it mind-numbing to guess why some members of this House choose to turn away from liberty at a moment of greatest challenge on a continent where over 500,000 Americans died for our liberty and their liberty. Do our colleagues not grasp that their political antics aid and abet a real proven enemy of liberty? Their foolery greatly endangers the people of our nation going forward as they allow the death of Ukraine's soldiers. When they acquiesce to Vladimir Putin, the acquiescenist wing of the Republican Party damages the standing of the United States of America globally. Could we be observing modern-day quislings, people who acquiesce to tyrants and throw daggers right at liberty's heart? Can some of our colleagues actually believe they exist alone on this globe? Do they know no history? Let me assure them, they cannot retreat to sheltered little corners where they will remain safe. When you cede the field to tyranny, when you whet its appetite, it will find you. Could some of these members among us hold their fanciful ideas because their families have been protected from the raw edge of tyranny? Could they not know the terrorist forces of subjugation? Our family knows the face of Russian terror. Believe me, no person should ever have to endure its cruel, murderous, soulless apparatchiks. Perhaps the lack of mandatory conscription in our nation's military for a generation means that we as a country are yielding very naive candidates for Congress and even for the presidency of our country, with some having no veterans in their own families. Do members of Congress genuflecting before Vladimir Putin actually not know that they are making our world a much more dangerous place in which to live? Are they absent any veterans in their families who fought on the continent of Europe in the last century and know the stakes? For the first time in recorded history, the structure of a free world and the means to defend it hangs in the balance. In Europe, well over 500,000 lives were sacrificed to the vision of what we now call the free world. But when our soldiers fought, the shield of liberty they bequeathed to each and every one of us and members of this body that have royally blessed us, as they fought, they didn't know exactly, they didn't have a name for the free world. There was no NATO, but they understood when they met an enemy to liberty, and they fought against it with everything they had. We have been living, anyone in this room, anyone listening, we have been blessed, living during the longest period of peacetime history among great powers the world has ever known. You are blessed, not for anything you did yourself, but for what those who came before us did for us. We can't squander that legacy. Liberty Shield was created out of the profound sacrifices of our citizens, enabling all of us to live more comfortable lives, maybe too comfortable, about which the people of Ukraine can only now dream and fight. I'll ask my colleagues who oppose assistance to Ukraine, has your life perhaps been too comfortable? Do you know nothing of what our forebears sacrificed and fought for? Do you not know the face of tyranny? Could members of Congress be so vapid and unaware of America's critical role in the history of liberty? Do they not understand their dithering threatens liberty? Do they not understand if one naively retreats into their comfortable corner of the world for safety, there will come a day when the mean forces of evil will find them and us? Read about Stalin's Black Raven squads to understand who you empower through ignorance. There is no safety in retreat. Our colleagues appease, but do not understand what it takes to maintain a free world. What a sacrilege to reward murderous dictators like Vladimir Putin. He operates in the style of his idol, Joseph Stalin, the most vile, crazed, savage Russian dictator. Stalin butchered millions upon millions of innocent human beings as they blood-soaked and sanctified the holy land of Ukraine. As its Black Raven squad sought out any person who got in the way, starved by Russia, shot in the back of the head by Russia, smothered to death in church basements, buried in nameless mass graves, in forests, frozen by starvation, by the millions. Did my colleagues not observe the recent torturous death of Russian freedom fighter Alexei Navalny? That is Putin's way of operating, modus operandi. Kill the opposition. By acquiescing to Russia, you reward murderers, despots, and tyrants. Parroting the talking points of Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin isn't just a sign of our colleagues' lack of knowledge on the subject. It is simply un-American. Are my colleagues too blinded by full bellies, media distractions, and their own self-satisfaction and attention to miss the predator on the march? Are my colleagues too consumed with the attention they draw by playing with the devil, that they foolishly hasten the day when the winds of oppression burn them and us? Only time will tell. But as the hours, days, and weeks tick by, Ukrainian lives hang in the balance. Ukrainian soldiers valiantly resist the third largest military in the world. I urge my colleagues to support funding for ammunition and weapons for Ukraine. I call upon the majority to bring the legislation to the floor immediately. Time is of the essence. The winter months over 2 years have been so difficult for the people of Ukraine and her soldiers. Liberty hangs in the balance on our watch. Give us a chance to vote for liberty. Don't hold back the legislation another month and then another month and then another month. Meet the moment. Protect the national security of the United States and of Europe. Meet our obligations. Let's vote for support of Ukraine. I pray we can do that next week. I yield back.